Good evening, team. I want to present some ideas which will support our students' literacy needs in order for them to be successful in the upcoming science unit. I've drafted 3 main goals in line with the operational, cultural and critical literacy demands for us to target our teaching. Number 1, our students will correctly define scientific terms such as solids, liquids and insulation. 2, our Year 3 students will participate in experiments and activities, recording their findings in procedural and information reports. And finally, number 3, to meet the critical aspects of literacy, students will use what they have seen and learnt from the experiments by investigating how their lunch boxes and drink bottles can stay cool longer. Now, how will these student goals be achieved? In practice, I suggest that we adopt the 5U framework to support our inquiry approach. For our EALD and Indigenous students, we can really focus our classroom time on the exploration stage and provide lots of tangible activities. This will promote rich discussions and develop our Tier 2 vocabulary, which will be required to make meaning and use in factual texts, which we will ask the students to create later. Our early diagnostics suggests some of our students are sitting at level 2 and below in the learning continuum. Now, to bridge this gap, it's important that we engage and explore the technical language early. An in-class example would be an early prediction investigation, which the students can use from the COOLIT resource from the Queensland Curriculum Assessment Authority. Now, here students will participate in an authentic group discussion and we model the intent of the investigation and scaffold the scientific concepts we are looking for. 3 glasses will be prepared with bubble wrap, alfoil and newspaper. Students can easily identify with these everyday objects and discuss what properties might influence the melting of ice within them. Now we can explicitly introduce the word insulation here and support their word consciousness during the investigation. Next, using Mazzano's sequential steps, we can provide definitions and examples of these terms, and we can have students repeat these with their discussions and recording of predictions. We can assess this comprehension through the observation of these discussions and review of students' written predictions. The introduction of our in-class science will also help this comprehension, and it's important we include pictures and graphical depictions to differentiate for our EALD and Indigenous students, so they too can build their text knowledge through visual and multimodal representations of the scientific language. We can also ask students to contribute words from different languages here, broadening classroom perspectives and enhancing personal connections. Other experiments that I've planned include the Heat It Up and Freeze It activity from Primary Connections. Now, these hands-on shared experiences will be limited by time, I know, but it's so important we provide these kids lots of opportunities to develop and practice their language and new vocabulary, as this gives greater meaning to the morphology of words through the experiments. Primary Connections also has a great take-home resource which we can distribute to parents. Now, the connections students make with their home lives can significantly strengthen the informal literacy learning potential both in our classroom and at home, and supports our cultural literacy demands. Following these investigations, we can advance the critical literacy demands through the explain, elaborate and evaluate phases of the inquiry model. Strengthening our school-wide teaching and learning cycle, we can create anchor charts for the students. These will explicitly show the structure and sequence of procedural and information texts. Students record the results of the investigation, and we can use storyboards to help establish a flowchart for students to follow and guide their writing. Section 3 in the COOLIT resource from QCAA has a great template for us to use. It includes a table and graphs and is a great skeleton, again, for the students to follow. It provides us another opportunity to gather accessible information, and the inclusion of pictures in ours and the student text will assist them with matching the sequence and modelling of language features of both procedural and information genres. Now, deconstructing the technical words using what I suggested, the SFL model, will assist our EALD and Indigenous students to create coherent texts. The SFL guided lessons helps these students change the focus from the action in the experiment to the object or concept, such as insulate to insulation. Now, this enhances the etymology for these students as they begin to recognize patterns in the words that they're using, and it elevates their higher order thinking. Here we can also introduce some sentence starters to our science wall to assist the students with recording their observations and predictions. Starters like, I think the something will be the best insulator because this works well with the skeleton frameworks in the QCAA resource, which encourages students to explain the results using word banks and sentence starters. Now, the evaluate phase will be where we test what the students have learned through the design of their own lunchbox or drink bottle. Queensland has a hot climate, and keeping our food and drink cool at school is so important to the children. This will give us a great final assessment, which the students can demonstrate their new knowledge and try out their new understanding, in turn making something meaningful to them. Thanks, team, and I'm really looking forward to this science unit.